Hey, hey, hi. Hey, friend. I'm so glad you made it.
Okay.
Thank you so much for joining me twice, since I know you tried to join last night,
Oh, right.
even on the
Ugh.
go. So I'm just going to give it about 2 more minutes before I actually get in, because I had a few people who are telling me that they're trying to join right now. So I'll just give them about 2 more minutes. Also, side note, my 3-year-old is not feeling well, and he is also home. So if he makes an appearance, hopefully it's only brief. If he tells me one more time, okay, mommy, I poo-poo on the potty, I'm gonna scream. I don't I don't know how many times a day he uses the potty, but I feel like this is excessive. Hey, Sasha.
Mine is a
So,
potty train.
oh yeah,
Not yet. He keeps saying he has to pee, so he'll just go sit on it for like 30 seconds and then go through the process of washing his hands and putting his diaper back on and his pants up, and it's like
that's how
all the
it
time. And I'm
starts.
like, can you just use it though? Just
He's
use it.
interested. That's how it starts. You know what you should do? Put him on the potty facing backwards, like sitting on the potty facing backwards, and give him a dry erase marker so he just draws on the lid of the toilet and you can wipe it off, and he
Oh,
sits
that's
there a
smart.
while. Yeah, till it
Yeah,
happens.
I'll try that. He's so different from my daughter. She was
Yeah,
potty
girls are
trained
way
pretty
easier.
good actually at 2.5, but oh yeah, he's very distracted.
Oh, Henry took his time. Waylon did it pretty quick. Henry took his time. But now I feel like we're doing it all the time. All right, you guys, I'm going to give it another like minute or so, because I had a handful of people telling me they wanted to pop on today and I don't see some of them. So I'm going to give them a little time and then we'll get started. I'm so excited to tell you guys this presentation today, or give you guys this presentation today, because I felt like I really stressed over it. Like I put so much time and thought and effort into it. So I hope you like it as much as I tried.
It's exactly what I need, so I'm gonna love it.
Yeah. I feel like this is such an under-discussed topic, like everyone talks to you about creating the thing, but no one talks to you about presenting the thing. Or even about like how to reach different types of learners, because there might be one thing that we're all talking about. Oh, here we go. Might be one thing that we're all talking about, permanent makeup in general, or beauty industry services in general, but not everyone is talking to you about how to reach these different types of learners. And by the way, a lot of the girls who go to beauty school and enter the beauty space are not the girls who are down to read a bunch of chapters and then take a test. Like that's not their general learning style. They tend to be more hands-on. They tend to be more tactile, more of talkers, discussers, auditory learners. So I think this will be good to put out there into the beauty space.
I like how different it is because, like you said, no one talks about it. It's like, yeah, I want to know that. I don't
Such
know
a
how to
good
find
one.
that out. Tell me about it.
Hey, Jenna, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long. You're pregnant?
Oh, congratulations!
Three more weeks.
Oh my God, you're so pregnant.
Yeah, I know. I left and I got super pregnant, and then it sucked, and then now I'm almost done and I came back.
Well, welcome back.
Nice.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Actually, even before I do that, let's just chat a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today before I just dive right in. So essentially, I coach on I coach beauty businesses and beauty entrepreneurs on how to create their own courses all the time. And it really doesn't matter what the subject matter is. When I'm teaching you how to create a course, it's very formulaic. There's, several different pieces that go into a course. And I crafted that kind of template for creating courses based on my experience working with the 3 different types of learning types. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But then I also want to kind of flip it and talk about different types of educators and different ways that we can kind of pull from all of those educator types so that we're still reaching those 3 learning styles, right? Let me edify myself a little bit. So if you don't know me, or if you're watching the replay and we have never been introduced, hi, I'm Victoria Glam and I own the Microblading Institute. I'm an educator and I teach other people how to educate as well. I am also a coach with Pretty Rich Bosses, where I teach people how to market and scale and build their businesses. I still provide services, and I also have created Brow Sister PMU products, where we sell products for PMU artists. In that vein, though, I would like to talk specifically about my journey into becoming an educator. So if you see this big binder here filled with all kinds of good stuff, it is because I live in a state where they required so much effort from me that I actually had to become a trade school, like a junior college, or like a Paul Mitchell or an Aveda. I had to create my entire course catalog with my course offerings, and I had to detail what those look like, and I had to come up with a breakdown of what your hours to refund ratio is, and produce all of our contracts. It was a real pain in the ass. It was a 10-month process, and I had to present all of that information to the Board of Regents, the Board of Colleges, and then not only teach them what microblading was, but then defend my curriculum to them. So I know the hell out of education, like frontwards and backwards. If you're creating a course, there's no one better to ask than my dumbass, because I don't know a lot, but I know how to pass the Board of Education when you're creating your own school. So with that in mind, I think it's safe to say I know a little bit about a little bit, and I would like to share that with you. So this class is called the Educator's Masterclass, because essentially what I'm doing is teaching you how to become not just an educator, but a master at it, and kind of how to master your learning, your teaching style for the different learning styles. So again, here I am. You can see I speak at conferences. I train with other people. I train other people. I am also the education ambassador for the American Academy of Micropigmentation. So I help people countrywide or internationally, because AAM is kind of expanding right now, create their own course curriculum. And I think that the way that I've done this is by creating these 3 categories. These are the 3 components that I have people make when they're creating their own course, with these 3 learning types in mind, right? So anytime, if you've ever worked with me on creating your own course, anytime that I'm creating a course, I say that there are 3 good components to it. Number 1, you have to have your presentation. So that would be like this, right? Very meta. What we're looking at right now is my presentation of this course. So that's what you create on Canva. And I'll teach you a little bit about how you actually create the presentation itself. But the why behind why do you need a good presentation is because there are visual learners who actually need to see a depiction of what it is you're talking about, right? And then as you are presenting this, some of your auditory learners are getting a little bit of the benefit, because of course you are orating your slides as you're presenting them. It's not just a bunch of slides for them to read with pictures. That would be called a workbook. And I do actually have you turn your presentation into a workbook whenever I'm coaching you to create your own presentation. And that is because there are people who not only need to see it and hear it, but they also need to write it down, which actually is a component of auditory learning. So auditory learners are people who need to hear you say it, they write it down, and then they reread it later. Often I will also include snippets from whatever is written on the slides, or words that I'm saying regularly in these presentations, like something that I repeat over and over again. Go ahead and put it in the workbook so that they can take it home with them. They can read over it when they get home. They can read over it a month from now. They can read over it while they're implementing. They can always refer back to it. Those are auditory learners. And then, of course, there is the clinic portion, which would be the hands-on portion. Anytime that your student is actually getting hands-on with an activity or hands-on with the thing that you are teaching, such as working on their first client or mapping their first model, etc. These are kinesthetic learners. So these are the learners who only retain something if they have done it with their own hands. And I think all of these 3 things together kind of create the student experience for your classroom. I think that this is something that, well, I wrote it here, right? Like you've heard this said a million times. I think this is something that we can all relate to, because while you might think of a girl, like, have you ever been at a store like Walmart or Target and seen this girl that you knew in like middle school, and you can't remember one conversation with her, but you remember that you don't like her? I think the reason for that is because people might not remember what you said, but they remember how it made them feel, right? We've all heard this saying before. I have no idea who actually started it, but sorry, Laura just texted me. Oh, what a PRB thing to say. So anyway, with that in mind, it's important to me that we create a student experience that is so warm and welcoming and supportive that all learning types feel like they got value out of the program. There's nothing worse than putting like your whole heart and soul into a course and really teaching the hell out of it. And then as someone's leaving, they kind of casually say over their shoulder, like, yeah, I don't feel like I really got the most out of it. I still need to take a real course. What? Come again? What'd you say? Run that by me again. What? A real course? I'm a fucking trade school, but go off. Go train with your aunt. So I keep talking about the different types of learners. Let's talk about these learning styles, right? So visual learners, auditory learners, and kinesthetic. If we wanted to give them some kind of a tangible personality, I would say that people who are visual learners are the same people who really enjoy cooking shows. If they like the Halloween Bake Off on Food Network, they are probably a visual learner. They want to watch you do it. They want to see you do it. They want to see it done over and over again. These are the same people who really love reels of people doing the actual brow pattern up close. They're like, that's so satisfying. So when we are creating our actual presentation, or when we are thinking about what kind of demonstrations we're going to do, we always need to keep this person in mind. Would this look good on the Halloween Bake Off Challenge? When you're setting up your camera, when you're zooming in, when you're looking back at the footage that you're going to show on the screen, make sure that it's top notch, because for some people, this is where they're going to get it. This is where everything's going to come together, right? So it's the graphics in your workbook. It's the videos that you're playing on the screen. It's the actual hands-on demonstrations where you are showing with your own two hands how you map a brow, how you actually hold a microblade, et cetera, et cetera. Moving on, auditory learners. These are the people who said that their favorite subject in school was history. These are the people, because how do you study history? This is a great question. How do you study history? Can you just like solve math problems and then boom, you know history? No. Do you build something and then poof, you know history? No. Is there some kind of formula that you have to remember in order to know history? No. It is listening to stories being retold to you. Maybe you write down a few cliff notes like dates or whatever, but in general, there's nothing that you can like study and then poof, know history. You have to retain information from hearing it, right? You hear a story and then you retell it on the test or in an essay or whatever. History class lovers are auditory learners. If it came very easy to them, you can tell them a story and they repeat it verbatim later. That is an auditory learner. So when you are doing your actual lecture, when you're standing up with the presentation behind you and you're orating it, you're actually narrating all of the presentation behind you, and the person is locking eyes with you and not looking at the screen, and they're hearing all of those key phrases that you're saying, like for instance, not saying always says bottoms up. And if you have ever taken a class through, you know exactly what that means. That little key phrase, that's an auditory learner. That caught your ear, mnemonic devices, that kind of thing, that's an auditory learner. And then for those kids who kept saying that recess or PE were their favorite class in school, that's a kinesthetic learner. If they liked science lab, that's a kinesthetic learner. So these are the people who do it with their own two hands. These are the people who have to actually physically do something to remember how to do it later. And they say that, they know that about themselves. They'll say, I'm not sure. You know, I think once I just get my hands dirty, I'll figure it out and then I'll remember. The same people who say like, you know, I just got to try it myself. And I think that's absolutely fair, because that is a genuine learning type. It sounds a little scary sometimes. Like, what do you mean you don't understand? You can't just like put your hands in the bowl and get started if you don't know what you're doing. But for some people, that is genuinely the way that they learn. They're like piecing together the things that you said or the things that they read while they're physically doing it. That's just how their brain works. Any questions about these three learning types?
No. Actually, I do have a question.
Hit me.
If there's people like myself, like I benefit from like all these methods, but I would say like my strongest would be the visual and the kinesthetic. So can you tailor, like, do they just learn from all these methods at once, or is someone always heavier in one? And how do you dissect it if they don't even know?
I think that by crafting your course to kind of have a safety net for all three, that person would be covered, even if they're kind of a hybrid learner. And more than likely, you lean one direction more than the other, even if it's just slightly. But if you're able to get information in more than one way, that's a good thing, I would say. Okay, so let's talk about visual learners. When you hear your teacher say, watch me, the first person whose head like whips around and is actually tuned in and focused, number one is the person who cares most, I would say. And number two is probably a visual learner because their ears perked up when they were like, good, now it's my turn, right? Because before that, I'm sure it was theory. You were telling them something and now I'm getting ready to show you something. Ignore my gross nails in this picture, but isn't that a baller microblading pattern? I was really proud of that one. I was really proud of that one. But yeah, you can see even in the bottom right-hand corner right here, this is actually the student's model, but I always do the first couple of strokes on the first model on either side of the brow, just to make sure, number one, that they get an actual demo on skin, hands up, just one-on-one in person. They can hear the sound, they can put on a glove, they can feel the vibration. And also when the client leaves, they're not an experiment, right? They have the same pattern on each side of the brow because I did it. They match on the right and the left. So in my courses, I include close-up video, like this picture up here of the microblading pattern. That's actually a video that I recorded that I just took a screenshot of for this presentation. But I will actually have videos that play in the class while they're working on their practice mats so that they can see how I hold the microblade, how I turn the microblade, what is the angle of the microblade. What should it look like in the skin? What's the difference between a really crisp stroke and a frayed stroke? They have this beautiful up close visual right here, right? In their workbooks, they have the same graphics. They also have a broken down, like pass one, basically pass two, pass three, several different graphics that explain all of the variations in the pattern that I'm teaching them for this class. Then they see me do a model. Everyone can crowd around and watch me do it. And then we're also doing that one-on-one together. Their first model, we do that together. The second model on the last day of class, they actually do solo and the educator just sits behind them. So the first time we're sitting side by side, the second time I'm sitting behind them. That way there's always an educator there to help out the model if anything's going on. But also that the student feels super supported and she just has like a wealth of knowledge around her, because as a visual learner, you really need to have someone right next to you demonstrating, this is how we sit, this is how the stretch goes, this is how the hand goes, they need to see all of that. So the watch me component is very important. I have heard before of some people just doing like the, I don't know what you would call it. They have like a close-up camera on their hand and they're sitting at a desk and it plays behind them on a screen up close. So you can actually watch them doing the microblading, but it's not on a client. It's on like a practice pad or whatever. And then they each get their models out or some. I've also heard of people sharing models, which I'm not into, just FYI, where like I do the left brow, you do the right brow. That model is not going to have two of the same brows, whatever. I guess desperate times, but if you know, models are fucking difficult. But anyway, I don't think it's enough. I think that you need to like bombard visual learners with lots and lots and lots of visuals that all say the same thing, by the way, one band, one sound. We shouldn't be showing them one video and then something different on a model. I think that we should have it here. We should have it here. We should have it here. Just like branding, basically. Branding is for visual learners, visual lovers. Auditory learners. So even though I have a great visual on the screen right here, by the way, that is a graphic courtesy of Hive Beauty. You can see their logo kind of in the background. I think you can still get this from Amanda at Hive. This is a really good graphic. I have it in my workbook and I have it in my presentation. You can see on the right-hand side that it's actually showing the footprint of each needle grouping, so that as I'm teaching needle theory, people are kind of, visual learners are able to understand this, as well as kinesthetic learners. But what about my auditory learners? That's what I'm doing. I'm literally talking right now. So I come up with key phrases. I come up with mnemonic devices. Often I'll also repeat myself or use inflection when something is, where can we get the visual? Are you talking about that graphic that's on the screen right now, Andy? That I would, Hive Beauty, HYVE beauty.com. That's where I got it. And that was, I want to say in 2020, maybe 2021, but I'm sure it's still there. So Hive has an educators program called Elevate Educate. I think that's what it's called. She has a lot of great resources and she also gives really good discounts on stuff that you might be putting into a student kit. So that's worth signing up for. But yeah, so key phrases, mnemonic devices, also use of inflection. I also love repetition, because even if you're half listening, you've kind of tuned me out a little bit. If you hear me say it 2 or 3 times, you're going to be like, what's happening? So there's this one part in my curriculum where I actually say color theory is one of the most important components of successful microblading. Color theory is one of the most important parts of successful microblading. Color theory is one of the most important components of successful microblading. And by the time I've said it the 3rd time, some people are laughing because they're like, okay, you're browbeating me with it. But some people are like, oh, okay, I'm going to retain that. And that's it's kind of a, I guess, 2-sided coin, right? Like, I am trying to be funny and just like get their attention and impress upon them how important color theory actually is. You cannot just color match their eyebrow hair and then slap it on their face. But also, I am doing it for the girly pops who need the auditory cues, right? Like repetition, the inflection, telling them why this is so important. That's important. I also tell a lot of stories. If you can't tell, I've already done it several times in this presentation, and it's only been, I don't know, 20 minutes, not even 20 minutes. So I love to pause and give a real life story or example of something that I'm talking about. So if I'm talking about color theory, you're going to see me pull up a visual of a lady who healed poorly or of a color correction, and then you're going to get the story behind it. So I love to set up a story by giving you kind of all the background information. Let me do it right now. So I have an aunt, her name is Connie, and she's fucking crazy. Okay. If you think I'm short, if you've never met me, I'm 5 feet tall. My Aunt Connie looks up to me. Okay. She's like 4'10", probably, I would say. And she's also a little overweight. So she looks like an Oompa Loompa. She's so fucking funny. Like, she lives on another planet. I don't know what it is about her, but when you meet her, you're just like, wow, I want to hang out with this chick. She's refreshing. She's so different. So she pronounces some words really differently, right? Like one time my cousin and I were walking to the corner store to go and get a snack in like middle school, and she called the cell phone and was like, hey, I heard sirens. Are you guys okay? You heard what? Sirens. So she's just like, she's off, she's space cadet. She's off in her own world anyway, right? But when Connie tells you a story, she starts in the middle and then she tells you the end, and you're very lost. It feels like you came in on the middle of a movie or in the middle of a series, and you're like, I don't understand who Pam is. What are you talking about? And then she'll kind of tell you the beginning, and she'll connect it to the end, and then she'll give you some more details from the beginning. This is a terrible way to tell a story. And because of that, I learned that you must lay the groundwork first. You've got to give people the backstory, even if that means that the story is going to be hella long. Because if I didn't explain to you that Connie's just kind of weird anyway, you would be pretty lost, right? So when you're telling a story, you have to tell it in order, and you've got to give whatever background information is going to help people to understand the rest of the story, right? So I've got to teach you color theory, at least the basics of it, before I can show you why someone healed poorly. Otherwise, you're not going to understand. If I just show you a poorly healed brow and I say, well, she healed gray because they didn't put any red undertones in her color when they were mixing it. You kind of get it, but not really, because we haven't talked about the color wheel. We haven't talked about why she needed, this particular client needed red. We haven't talked about, the undertones of her skin or her Fitzpatrick, none of that. So it's very important when you are creating your course that even if you're going to give a really great in-depth explanation with a really beautiful visual, that you give as much of that information in a really thoughtful order as possible. I cannot impress that upon you enough, because there's a lot of people out there giving a ton of really good information, but if they don't receive it in the right order, then they might as well have not received that at all. They'll be just as confused, or even worse, like super overwhelmed when they leave class as before they were in class. So stories are great. Just make sure that you are telling them A, with a purpose, and B, laid out really, really well with as much baseline info as possible. Does that make sense? Cool. All right, and then our last learning type would be the kinesthetic learners. These are the ones who say, I need the hands-on experience. I need to touch and feel and hear the whole thing, right? Because of course, part of microblading and part of using the machine is hearing that sound to know I'm at the right depth. So I'm feeling that vibration. And once I get the sound matched, then I know, okay, I'll remember this feeling. I'll remember this vibration. So I actually do that a lot. And you can see my friend Veronica is educating right here by literally, she is holding the machine and she has her student putting her hand right on top of hers. Do you feel the vibration? Do you feel the angle that I'm holding it? See where my thumb is, see how I roll the machine. So she actually had to get hands-on and show this hands-on learner how to position the hands, what she should be feeling, et cetera, et cetera. I would probably guess that Veronica is probably also a kinesthetic learner because she can't just say, do you feel the vibration? She got to feel the vibration too, which is good. It's good when your learning styles match. I would also say practice on various different types of media. Don't just practice on the practice skin and then say, great, get on a client. So I actually have a wonderful example in my in-person 4-day brow class where we practice depth and also skin types by utilizing, that's okay, by using, well, we've switched to Roma tomatoes because apples have gotten expensive. Inflation is out of control. I don't have $1.99 for 8 apples. That's crazy. So 60-cent Roma tomatoes are fine. That's a really good depiction of very thin skin, like retinols or elderly aging skin, that kind of thing. We use oranges or lemons for really rough sun damaged skin, and then bananas will give you, or even plantains will give you that really perfect microblading noise at the right level. And also the strokes don't bleed out. You don't smell the smells, like, which kind of, if you use an orange or a lemon, you'll smell orange or lemon all throughout the room, which kind of depicts like when a client gets a little juicy, like that lymph fluid or whatever. So anyway, I love to craft good experiments like that. We do similar experiences throughout class with pigments. So we diffuse pigments so that we can see all of the undertones. We can see, we do the classic drawdowns that everybody does. So you can see mass tone and base tone and pigments, all that kind of stuff. I like to try and have for each unit that we're teaching, at least one hands-on experience, if not 2 or more. So even with needle theory, like we're passing the needles around and we're sticking them out and looking at them under a loop so you can see a 1 round versus a 5 shader and a mag. You can see what it looks like with its little footprint on the practice skin. I give as much visual learning as possible for 2 reasons. Number one, I know that kinesthetic learners are often coupled in with other learning styles. You might be an auditory learner or a visual learner, but the kinesthetic really drives it home. And number 2, it sets my class apart. No one else gives that much hands-on. They give all this theory and they want to just rip and run through it. They're ripping and running from 9 to noon. And then they say, great, get on a practice skin. Tomorrow you're going to do a model. You're not ready. And the fastest way for me to get you as much experience as I can is to give you as many experiences with these materials as I can. And you can take these experiences home and you can practice them or recreate them yourself, because I, of course, also give a full student kit and they've got all of this in their workbook to take home. So I'm experimenting to see different outcomes when it comes to like pigments or needles. Look at the difference between these two, look at the difference between these shading styles, look at the difference between, you know, an angled blade and a U blade. And I'm also doing my best to teach them what it should feel like when you're actually working on this type of skin, or what the machine should feel like when you're at the right depth, et cetera, et cetera. Cool. All right, so now that we understand different types of learners, let's talk about different types of educators. Don't you just love it when we get to you and your problems? We know what's wrong with the students. Let's talk about what's wrong with you. So there are several different teaching styles. There's the delegator, there's the discussion, and then there is direct learning. And if we're on a scale of high to low, reading from left to right, usually task experiences are tied to these learning or teaching styles in this way. So if you are a delegator, they're going to get a very high amount of task experience. And if you are a direct educator, it will be much, much lower. And I'll talk about that in a second. So when we're talking about Oh, these are a little bit out of order, but it's okay. I guess we're going from direct to delegate. So from low to high. When we're talking about direct educators, these are people who talk to auditory learners. These are people who teach or give information by telling you. You have to listen to me. I'm going to give you step-by-step instructions. I'll break it down for you piece by piece. I'm going to tell you the story from beginning to end. That's how they're comfortable disseminating information. It might have nothing to do with what your learning style is, and it's just their way of communicating. I talk. I'm a chatty Cathy. So it's very easy for me to explain things to you, which is great if you're an auditory learner. So I would say if this is your teaching style, a couple of tips would be, number one, to start with the big picture. Like I was saying earlier, like make sure that you are teaching your story in order. So for permanent makeup, that means literally starting with the big picture, because remember, in a beginner's class, they don't know anything at all, right? So I would say start with the word micropigmentation and work your way down from there. What is micropigmentation? I have a man in town who is driving me insane right now. Okay. First of all, I have worked with a marketer who he currently is working with. I'm not currently working with them, but they have run Google ads for me in the past, and I like them just fine. Like it's a husband and wife team. The wife and I are good friends. I have no complaints with them except for this one. They compare me to their other account, like I don't know who he is, all the time. And it grates my nerves because I've told them that this man was super rude to me. So this man does S&P here in town, and he wanted his wife to start doing microblading. And he filled out an application for her. I called to speak with her, and they were in the car together, and he kept speaking over her, which is very annoying. And he basically like telling her to shush. He was going to ask the questions. Okay. And then he tells me, well, you know, I do the micropigmentation and I really want her to get into microblading. And he kept saying that over and over again. And I was I was like, so are you trying to tell me that you do scalp micropigmentation, like S&P? And he said, yeah, do you know what micropigmentation is? I do. Do you know what micropigmentation is? Because you sound fucking stupid right now. Like you are talking to me like I'm down here and you're up here, but you are using a word like anatomy and expecting me to know you're talking about a femur. Micropigmentation encompasses all aspects of permanent makeup or any kind of, you know, pigmentation underneath the dermis. Like this is whatever. Drives me crazy. So I always make it a point to literally just start there so that my students don't sound like jackasses when they talk to other people. Do you know what the term micropigmentation means? Cool, let's start there. And then I kind of break it down for them step by step. So micropigmentation means scalp micropigmentation, microblading, powder fill, eyeliner, lips, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, areola, all paramedical, all of it. Then I start honing in on today, we're focusing on XYZ. So you can see how I'm starting with the big picture and then I'm narrowing down to our focus today. And then I'm taking questions all along the way to make sure that I'm not leaving anything out. I'm not confusing anyone. Being clear and concise is going to be the thing that kind of narrows down you over talking the class to making sure that everyone is kind of following along with you on this ride. You're not losing anyone the more you're telling this big picture story. Because it's very easy when you start with the big picture to get lost in the minor details. I call it majoring in the minors. Very, very easy to get lost in those details. Just because, like, yes, I've heard that phrase before. I have two key coaching phrases I would say that everyone has heard me say. I would say, I think you're kind of majoring in the minors right now, which is a really nice way to say, hey, I need you to fucking focus. You're getting distracted. And I say, okay, when you present me with too many goals at one time, I say, listen, you got 2 horses, but you only got 1 ass. We got to ride one at a time. Jessica's riding. But it's true. You gotta be fucking focused. You can do one goal at a time. Knock that off and then let's set a new goal. But with students, sometimes you really have to redirect their focus, keep their attention, and just kind of like keep them on the pathway, because especially with direct education where you're opening, you know, yourself up and telling a lot of personal stories, or you're telling like personal stories with you and other previous students or clients or whatever, personal experience, I guess I should say, and you allow for questions, it's easy for that to kind of become a runaway train. And then before you know it, you've lost an hour or 2 hours of class time. And when you sold a 4-day class for fundamentals or even a 5-day class, time is very precious. So I would say provide as much detail as you actually need to, but remain really concise with your words. Choose those details, decide which ones are very important, and kind of keep the party trucking, because you're also going to be losing people who are not auditory listeners as you're disseminating this information. Like kinesthetic learners, they can tell me how many moths are in the room right now because I have lost them. I've been talking too damn long. I need to show them something. I need to get them feeling something. That's the same people, by the way. I used to get in so much trouble for this in school. I guess I must be an auditory and kinesthetic learner. That's got to be it, because my teacher would be talking and I'd be doodling. Did this happen to you also, Jessica? I bet it did. And they'd be like, are you listening? Yeah, Jill, I am. I can do more than one thing at a time. I guess I should ride one horse with my one ass. Okay, the next education style would be those who open it up to discussion. So if you are actively encouraging discussion, this is a good thing. But the thing that we take out of it from previous, what we were just talking about with direct education, is it's going to be less about my experiences and more about yours. So actually, this was the teaching style of Socrates. Socrates, like the famous guy, the Hanging Gardens, Socrates, Theocritus, whatever. He would always open. He was very famous for these big open forums, and he would pull hundreds of people if he wanted to, and basically have an open discussion on whatever topic was on, and everyone's opinion was listened to. And then you could refute it or you could agree with it. You could provide supportive content or whatever, and which I'm sure went on for hours and hours. So as educators, we got to rein it in a little bit, right? So if you want to open the floor to discussion, I like to ask open-ended questions that I already have prepared in advance. I ask the same questions every class. They're actually in my educator's manual. So I will ask, like, what is micropigmentation? Anybody want to take a guess? And then I kind of, allow the conversation to go, and then I give them the correct answer, and I tell them, like, good. So you guys already kind of know a little bit. There's room to grow. Perfect. Now everyone's actively engaged, right? And I broke some of the tension in the room without an annoying icebreaker. I think icebreakers are so cringy. Like, tell me what's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done. Okay, moving on. So the topic for today is, like, that had nothing to do with anything. This is so embarrassing. This is a very Gen X thing, and I'm not into it. Instead, I like to have just open discussion whenever I'm opening a new subject in class. So on day one, if I'm showing you how to get your license and I'm walking you through the state website, the first question I'm going to ask is, does anyone in the room already know where they'll be working? And then I want to hear about it. And I'm asking everyone, okay, so if you don't know where you're working, what's the plan? Like, what's your first move? Are you going to be renting a room? Are you looking? Are you not quite ready? Are you still working somewhere? It's a whole open discussion, right? But it doesn't go on for ages and ages. It's maybe 30 or 45 seconds per person with 6 to 8 people in the room, and then we move on. So as long as you continue to act as the facilitator here and keep the conversation moving, everything should be fine. And people are going to feel much warmer. The whole vibe of the room feels really supportive. And this is when people who are super shy are going to feel, even if it's minorly, just a little bit more comfortable. Have you ever been in a room in, like, let's say in a, I don't know, a college class? For me, I think of like my big college classes where we had stadium seating. If I were asked to present in front of those 100 people, I know I could do it because I could talk to anyone. I'm like missing that fear. I don't know why people have a fear of public speaking. I don't get it. But I know that, 99 of the other people in the room would be like, But if the room felt a little bit smaller, like, oh yeah, I've spoken to him before, I know we share some of the same experiences or opinions or whatever, it's a lot easier to perform in front of those folks, right? So whenever it comes time for that student and her first model, and some of the other students are standing there watching or listening so that they can also learn, it's not going to make her doubly nervous, because now these are her like little friends that she's hung out with for 2 or 3 days, and she knows them a little bit. My first couple of classes, I actually made this mistake where I forgot that other people didn't know each other. So I had 4 chicks in the room who I know because I did their onboarding call. I signed their paperwork. I met with them already. And as they came in one by one, I said, hi, I'm Victoria. Nice to meet you in person. And they told me their name. And that was good enough for me. I never realized I never introduced them to each other. So they would literally be asking something simple like, excuse me, can you hand me that pen? And she didn't hear me. And they would say, hey. And I realized, oh, she doesn't know her fucking name. That's my bad. So I think it's good. I think it's good to open up a little bit of discussion. It's good to have different ideas and opinions on topics, as well as this is where you're going to find questions that people were too nervous to just raise their hand and ask outright. If we're already having a discussion, questions will somehow pop up, and then you'll have the chance to answer questions that maybe would have gone unanswered otherwise, and your student would be leaving the class thinking, I still don't know X, Y, and Z. One of the pitfalls here is that we want to make sure that one student like me, like a chatty Cathy, like a talks a lot, doesn't just dominate the discussion for the entire hour or so, because then we'll still have our wallflowers feeling unsupported. Cool? Jessica's like, that's me. I'm a talker too. Okay, and then the final one that we're going to chat about is the delegator. So this would be the one that I said will give students the highest amount of task experience. And that is because the delegator education style is literally saying, hey, I'm empowering you to do this. Here's the tools, go and do it. Let me know what you need from me. So with direct, I'm giving you actual instructions, step by step. Do this first, do this next, do this next. With discussion, I'm saying, what do you guys think about this? These are the instructions. What do you guys think? Give me your opinions. Give me your thoughts. Does this make sense to you? Are there any questions? And then with delegator, I'm saying, okay, here's the list. Go and do it. Go and do it. And for some people, that's fine because they've heard, maybe they're a dual education style, right? Like, okay, I heard you say it or I saw you do it, and now it's time for me to do the hands-on portion. I'm ready. For some people, they're going to have major anxiety. So you need to be right there, available and ready. It's cool to let your little birdies fly, but you cannot let them drown because there's someone's face that hangs in the balance, right? We're working on actual skin. So I think that's pretty important as well, to make sure that yes, let them spread their wings and fly, but be right there. So in this picture that we're looking at, you can see it's almost like a little group project. Everyone's involved, everyone's looking, everyone's very close to the model and talking about it. But the person who's holding the brow spoolie and discussing, I'm sure, probably the redness in her skin is actually the educator. So she's right there in the center, even though everyone is going to have some kind of attachment to this group project. So I wrote here some examples that you could assign team projects, also a capstone project meaning like, hey, this is your topic. You can depict it however you want to. That's a lot of freedom, right? Because there's hardly any boundaries or rules set there. It's very like, there's a lot of moving pieces. It can be whatever you want it to be. Team projects would be like, hey, this is your subject. You're giving a speech on Monday. Capstone project is like, hey, this is your subject. Let me know how you want to teach us. Whether that's going to be building something, telling us something. I used to hate the kids who would like put on a fucking skit. Like, why are you doing this? You could have just told me this. Why did it have to be costume changes involved? That's so annoying. You're taking up so much time. But in the scope of PMU classes, I would say team projects would be like, maybe this table is working with these pigments for whenever we're doing the pigment. What's the word? Not the drawdowns, with the water disbursement. Or maybe it's teams who are working on, like this set. You guys have the round shaders, you guys have the liners, look at them underneath the whatever, that's just like the team that you're working with as you're kind of going through these different little motions. Capstone projects, obviously that's going to be doing your client's brows. So it's not necessarily a team project. It's just a one-on-one, because I don't know if she's going to need microblading or powder fill or combo brow. She's your model. You brought her in, but we're going to work on it together. No worries. And research projects, I mean, a lot of times just getting to the class is a fucking research project. Which class should I take? Am I even interested in this? I don't know. But yeah, I think there are different ways to kind of incorporate delegation into your classroom so that your students are getting as much hands-on as possible, while also still being supportive and being present so that we're not stressing them out, especially since it's their first time touching skin. Difficult learners, people who are just not getting it, actually don't exist. That is a symptom. That is a symptom of your classroom style. So that's a way that we're essentially telling people, okay, I've got to stop and reframe as the educator and see where I'm losing you. if you're not getting it, then I'm not giving it to you in the way that's needed. So I would revisit those learning styles and I would revisit those education styles and just reframe and see where I'm not leaning, what I'm not leaning into enough that you're not getting it. Now, of course, using like a mix of all three teaching styles should eliminate the vast majority of people saying, I don't understand, I'm not getting it. It should eliminate a whole lot of that. And of course, there are always going to be the rare bird with like a disability, somebody who, you know, what's probably the most common one, and it's not listed as a disability. There's nothing like, it's not a disability, but it is difficult to teach, if you're a right-handy, to teach a lefty in 2 days how to hold something or how to utilize, how to do the stretch or whatever. So that's one that I'll renege on, they do not exist. That is a little difficult. That's like a, was that TikTok audio where she goes, that's advanced. I'm a beginner. That's an advanced teaching style, teaching someone to mirror you or mirroring them and like figuring out how to situate your hand. But no worries, because I'm actually going to give everyone who was able to attend today, I'm going to give you a template so that you can create your own course. And it literally says, like, this is where you should brain dump. Now organize it into this. Now do the, so it's step by step, helping you to do all of the things that I have talked to you about in this course today. And if that doesn't sound like fun to you, if you just wish somebody would just fucking do it for you, I already have. Already have. So if you want to teach my curriculum in your class, you can actually just do like a yearly membership. And there are some qualifications. I'm not just giving my course and branding to anyone who wants it. You have to meet certain standards, of course, as an educator, such as I want you to be licensed for at least 3 or 4 years. I need to see your healed work. I need to know that your classroom is suitable, etc. But if that is the case, it's very much like a bed in a bag. It's everything that you need to teach the class. So it's your student workbooks, it's your training manual that tells you when to press play on which video, what to say, what hour you should be doing what each day, et cetera, et cetera. It's you get our student kits, you get the classroom videos, you get like everything, right down to our certificates that are all serial numbered and everything. But I am launching that Monday on my birthday. So if you want more information on that, or if you're interested in it, just open your camera up to the little QR code in the corner and it'll bring you to the waitlist page. But you'll see me blowing Instagram up about that next week. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and open up the floor for any questions that you may have. And this replay will be available. I can't come see. Can I come in a couple minutes? Okay. Just go ahead and unmute yourself if you have any questions. I'm going to go through the chat real quick.
For the one that's done for you, is it like Beauty Angels where it's the course is, we would say it's by you, or is it just all templated that we make for us?
Yeah, it's the Microblading Institute's course. And the certificate says from the Microblading Institute, which is an AAM approved curriculum, and then it's serial numbered so we can authenticate no matter, you know, who's teaching it. Also, I don't know, I'm not familiar with Beauty Angels model, but we are not going to be licensing, or I don't know, licensing our training to people or whatever within an hour of each other. Because I don't know. I don't need that many educators. I feel like that's going to be such a fucking headache.
Fair enough.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out how to keep track of I want the serial numbers to also show who the educator was, you know? So I'm still figuring that out. We're working on it.
I like if you figure it out and I use it. This makes
yeah.
a little bit easier.
Amen, right? And look, I've been teaching this course for over 2 years now, and it's great. I've taught, you know, over 150 students at this point. And I've also done, you know, I use, you know, the formula. So I've used beta testers already. So I taught 2 educators who are now currently teaching the classes to be educators. They flew in and took the train the trainers with me, learned the actual curriculum, learned how to teach it. And now for the next year, they get to sell as many of that course as they want. And they keep that money that's theirs because they took train the trainers and they have their like year-long membership or whatever.
Also, it all comes it's our own business. It's just under.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not trying to deal taxes with everybody and all the rest. No, hell no. You charge what you want for the seat. You put as many seats in there as you want. I do put a cap on that, actually. Let me retract. But yeah, I don't want any money off your course because then I got to pay taxes on everything that you make. You get your kits from us, your student kits and your certificates, and that's it. You just, every January you kind of re-up.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, we can do that in Canada and US and stuff like that. Cool. Yeah. Dope.
But it went really well. I was surprised at how smoothly it went, especially with that trainer's manual. I think that's very helpful to have, like, what verbiage to say, what time we should be doing each thing, when I should press play on which video, what activity comes now. I thought that was really smart because it's already kind of set up to encompass all 3 of the learning styles and everything.
This is literally like most of the things on my list for my next call that I was like, how am I going to figure this out in February?
Damn, I really should have stayed your educator.
I was like,
Who's with you now, Sasha or Joanne?
I have Joanne.
I love her.
I'll be
She
talking to her.
signed up. She was supposed to be here, but I guess that was last night when I wasn't feeling well. And then my kid slept with me and he woke up and he was like coughing up a lung.
Oh yeah, this time I think she's on student calls.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure. Usually she kind of touches in with me when she's done her calls in the afternoon.
Yeah. Jenna said, amazing. Thank you, Jenna.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I like all of your different fruit demonstrations.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I even in the workbook, they're broken down even more because, of course, everything that I'm saying out loud, I have written down, right? I name the fruit so that they have little personalities you can remember. And I kind of describe the personalities so you can remember like different. Like it's easy. I guess it's easy because I've done it a million times to be like, oh yeah, apple, that's delicate skin. But when she's named Agnes Apple, which is an old ass fucking name, and we talk about, she celebrated her 70th birthday this month, and she's been taking retinols for 15 years, and on and on. It's very easy to remember those skin types at that point. Mnemonic devices.
Is it Ruth?
Huh?
Is the Roma tomato named Ruth?
What was her name? Maybe actually. It may have been. We just started using Roma tomatoes. Go ahead, Jenna.
I was just listening. Where did you say the QR code was?
Oh, look, it's here. How do I share my screen again? Here we go. Here in the corner. You can also just go to victoriaglam.com. And it's the second button. It says become a PMU educator.
Cool, thanks.
She got so big.
She's in 5T now and she's only 3. She got big.
Yeah, she's a monster.
She's a chunk too.
She's so cute. Jenna was my PRB student and her daughter was in like every meeting that we had. She'd just always be sitting on the counter like, hey.
Yep.
Jenna would be like behind her.
And she was always naked and she's still always naked.
Do y'all want to hear the funniest thing that ever happened to me as a PRB educator? This lady was a student of mine, was sitting in her kitchen, just like I am, the computer in front of her, and behind her was the whole kitchen, right? So I guess her computer's probably against a wall or something. Well, her husband could tell she was on a phone call, but I guess he didn't know that the camera showed the whole room, and he just got out of the shower, but he wanted something out of the fridge. So he got on all fours and crawled to the fridge with his towel around his waist. And I could see the whole thing because I can see the whole room. I could see the entire room. And she could see it too. And she didn't say anything. She just like stared at him for a little while. And then she said, "What are you doing?" And he's like this, like trying to open the fridge, She said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "You're on the phone." And she was like, "So are you." Oh my God, you had to be there. That shit was so funny. I think I took a screenshot and sent it to her while we were on the phone. I was like, "Here, Nicole, keep this. This is so funny." So, it sounds like I have a booty to wipe. I poo-pooed on the potty, mommy. Okay, I'm coming. I have already sent out those emails. They're supposed to go out at 9 PST. So what is that, 4 minutes from now? With your template for you to create your own course. And also I went ahead and included the link for the wait list if you wanted to use my education curriculum instead. You just got it? Cool. If you have any other questions, or Indy, if you want to celebrate birthdays together, since mine's on Monday and yours is tomorrow, just DM me anytime. I am the only person who touches the Victoria Glam account. currently. The Microblading Institute account is someone else. That's my marketing girl, Marcy. So you can always just pop
Happy
in and say, hey,
birthday.
Marcy, thank you. Happy birthday to you as well. And yeah,
Thanks.
if you guys have anything else that you want to talk about, or if you think of questions later, just DM me on the Victoria Glam account and I'll shoot you a voice message back. Enjoy the rest of your Friday. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.